we use the head as a method of measurement, obviously. Mine almost always land in the 7.5 head zone, and that's mostly because that's how I was taught using that standard. So it's just kind of ingrained. So it almost always automatically falls in 7.5. But if you land in that area right there, you're going to have a fairly proportioned figure. On a sidebar, you want to start with a head that's shaped relatively like that. And you'll see, you've all seen this shape of head with the two axis lines on the face. This is your pitch. So whichever way the head tilts, that thing goes with it. And that usually on a front view runs down the center of the face, right through the nose, from the top to the chin. This is our eye line. And these are the two that I'm concerned with in this drawing. If that's all you put in the face, that's fine. Like I said though, if you're comfortable drawing figures and you do your own characters and things like that, by all means have fun with it. So that's the basic head. And the head also breaks down basically into these 4 relatively equal sections. And this section right here is the nose. And the nose measures the head as the head measures the figure. So if you want to start the drawing of the head, you can actually start with the nose and use that as your tool of measurement, just as a little side note. Good morning, just starts here. So we're going to move on now to the important part of the figure. So I'm going to try to keep it on the page. One of mine, I usually draw bigger than these pages, but we'll try and keep it all on the page. I always start with a circle, but do not leave it like that because we're not drawing Charlie Brown. But it gives me a sense of the cranium of the head. And we want, sometimes this part lines up with the eyes, sometimes not. So erase that part of the circle and throw in, just make a habit of putting those in. This gives us an idea of where the head's looking. And we can use that when we draw the figures in perspective so that they're not all staring at the viewer or the camera, whatever the case may be. So we've got this head, and that's the size. And we want to measure down somehow through the torso, starting with the torso. You can take your fingers and just copy that size. You can measure it however you want. Usually, if you just kind of use your pencil as the memory, you'll get fairly accurate. We'll call that close enough. Now, from the head, you definitely don't want a head sitting on shoulders. You do need to have a little bit of a neck. So I like to come out of the side of the head for the neck. And this is where knowing how to divide the face is handy, because we know that the neck, that from the chin to where it plants itself in the clavicle area, is about the same as this space here. Some are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter. But it all depends on what you want in your drawing. And if you were actually looking at people, you would start noticing all the differences. So that gives us a good sense of where the neck should be. And then if you come off the chin or a little bit below, better to go below, you'll come into those trapezius muscles. And they're what makes up the top of the torso. And this way it looks like the next part of the body rather than sitting on top of, which you see a lot, and it's obvious that it's wrong. So we want to have that kind of buried in the torso. Basically, the shape of the torso is something, if you were to oversimplify, you've got something like this. But it's a little more flexible than that looks. So we move down, we've got one head space, we move from the chin down to the next, which is the chest. And that gives us, I'm just going to put a line here, mark it. So, obviously, I think I look, oh, that's nice. I look a little small there for a second. So one head is the head, two goes down to the chest, kind of the bottom of the pectoral muscles. The third head makes its way down to the navel. I believe, yeah, it's with an E. So that's where the third head measures down to. There is a rib cage in here, and you can kind of put that stuff in if you want, or if you want a pure mannequin looking thing, you can do that too. And then the fourth head goes from the navel to the bottom of the pelvic, like basically the pelvic bone or the crotch, whichever word you aren't offended by. So that gives us our basic measurement from here to here, which is 4 heads. Not to be confused with forehead. So we've got that. If you want to do the mannequin thing, you can look at that mannequin over there. You notice it's got that ball in the center. That's just to show that it's very flexible. And then if you want, you can give the hips kind of a bowl shape. It's not overly accurate, but it gives an idea of what that shape is. And then you've got that shape. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If that's how you want to do your figures, I'm on board with that, especially if you're not super comfortable with them. Once you have this forehead torso, it makes the rest of the measurement relatively easy as far as getting the full height. Where a lot of people lose their measurement is in the legs, because the legs don't have the markers that the torso have. So people tend to shorten up on the legs. 9 times out of 10, they make them too short. Sometimes they make them too long. If you want to choose one, choose going long. Making them long is a little bit better because you're proportioning to this torso. If you were to make a child, then obviously a child is like 3 heads. So you've got, if you look at little kids, they have gigantic heads. They've got melons, and they're like giant melon-headed little people. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the proportions correctly. So what we do, just take this and double it. And that would logistically give you 8 heads. As I do mine, I'm probably going to end up at 7.5, but oh well. As long as it's in that range, 7 to 8 heads, you're going to be good. So now we know that the legs start up in here, the leg bones come out kind of like this. We're not too worried about the overall actual structure. Let's not get hung up on that. But basically, what I tend to like to do, I just put a circle in there. If I'm doing this mannequin style, I want it to look flexible. So I put a little circle in there, and I draw it down, and I can just bring down another circle in here somewhere for the knee. But let's measure it out. So we've got 4 heads. Our next measurement is going to come down to here. We'll call it thigh. It's kind of just above the knee. And then our next measurement is coming down. I think I'm slowly expanding my measurement there. Let's move that a wee bit. So the next one comes down below the knee, so we'll call it the knee. The knee is kind of captured within that space. And then we're going to go, yeah, see, I'm ending up at like 4.5, or 7.5 heads. So this is lower leg, and then foot. So we now know that the knee is somewhere in here, the ankle's probably there, and it goes down into some kind of a wedge shape for the foot. We don't really want stick legs. We want to try and body these things up a little bit. So throw in some cylinders that are kind of tapered. So you've got a typical cylinder, something like that, but arms and legs are definitely tapered. So draw something more like that, and that'll give you a more accurate look to the limbs. You can just erase a little bit As it hits the knee area, the legs widen again. It gets a little wider, it tapers in, then it widens out again. And it comes down into a new shape, and again tapers at the ankle. Perfect description of the way the legs in a very basic form look. So keep those shapes fairly geometric if you're working with this style. And even if you look up a lot of anatomical drawings for characters and game design and whatnot, a lot of times you'll see this basic shape kind of happening. And then we can do the same thing here. Leave that a little long. And throw that leg in, looking at it a little way. A simple wedge is fine. Some kind of wedge for hands and feet is fine. Now the arms, same thing. You don't have to put these circles in. I like to do it. Just makes them look flexible. The arm comes down, and if we stand at attention with our arms at our sides, our elbow approximates our navel. It might not be dead on, but if you were to draw a line across, it's somewhere very close to our navel. I have short arms, so I know my elbow is slightly above my navel. But I'll draw it right around the navel. So that would be our elbow. And then we continue down, and the wrist approximates the pelvic bone, relatively close. And then our hand comes about halfway down the thigh. And that'll give you a good representation. I didn't leave myself much room here for the other arm. That gives you a good measurement to lay out your arm. And then we can do the same thing. A little wider than that at the bottom. Build it with tapering cylinders, and you've got a decent enough shape to build your arms on. And the hands, again, can be a wedge. You can extend them a little bit, depending on the view you're making. A couple notes. The hand, if you take this size right here, it basically covers from the chin to this is technically the hairline. That's when you break the face down like that. But our hand, if you take the heel of your hand and put it in the bottom of your chin and lay it on top, you'll find it comes about, well, in my case, I don't have hair. And I saw you checking that. But our hand does cover that amount of the face, like we can totally cover our face with our hand. Our foot, people also tend to make these things too small. If it looks like your figure's gonna fall over, it probably would if it had tiny feet. This size, if you notice, and this size are very similar. Our foot is about the same size as our forearm, from our inner elbow to our wrist. And if you were able, I don't think I'm flexible enough to step on my own forearm, but you can take your shoe off and find out it's pretty darn close. So interesting, and a lot of times people don't believe it, but within reason it's generally true. These are all based on what's called a canon for the human figure. It's a set of guidelines. It's not 100% true. There's always variations. But if you understand this canon, and this is called the canon for the head, if you understand them, you almost will always draw relatively proportioned figures no matter how you're drawing them. And then once you understand the proportion, you can start distorting it, and it won't look like you made a mistake. It'll look like you distorted on purpose. And there's a big difference if you get into some kind of character design. So this is what we're going to kind of focus on for doing our figures in proportion. I didn't post this. It is in the video if you want to watch it, if you're more interested in it. If you want a picture of this thing here, you can definitely take it. I always leave this stuff over here on my pile of random demonstrations, so you can definitely look at that. Oh, one thing I will bring up. If you're drawing a figure sitting down. So you've got your figure sitting here. Whatever, doing whatever. You've still got your four heads here, unless they're really slouching. Sometimes you lose a little bit there. Then you lose almost two full heads there. And what you usually have a little big on that one. Anywhere between 5 and 6, but usually 5, 5.5 heads. I've overdrawn this a little bit, but if you stay 5 and 5.5 heads on a seated figure, you're going to be okay. And again, it depends how if you've got them really slouching, then you lose even more of that height, like the way we sit in a lazy boy chair, that kind of slouching. But if you've got them sitting very good posture, you're probably maybe even pushing 6 heads, but usually 5, 5.5. So just if you happen to want to put a seated figure in yours. So there's that. Now, moving on. Don't have to use a ruler for your horizon line. And it's a good idea to leave your horizon line in your drawing just for a kind of a reference. You don't have to use a ruler, I just do because it's easy. I like it in my favorite spot, up in the upper third. That's where I usually do it. And once you have that, you just go about placing different sized heads on the horizon line. Maybe I'm going to do a little tiny one right here. Eyes are kind of on the horizon. Another one there. I'm going to do a giant one right here. Eyes are a little below the horizon, but that's okay. Do a not so giant one here. It looks like these two are almost together. Again, I kind of missed the horizon. As long as it's close to, even if the head was at the bottom of the horizon, but as long as it's somewhere on the horizon and relatively close to your eyes, or the eyes of the figure you're drawing, you'll be okay. And I'm going to put another figure this size here. So we've placed 5 figures. If you want to do more, you can. If you want to make like a crowd, I think somebody yesterday made like a massive crowd of people. Oh, this is pretty cool. But 5 is the bare minimum. Once you have that in place, you just start drawing your figure kind of proportion as I was talking about. So obviously this, maybe drop that a little bit more. This figure is up here in your face, standing there shirtless, trying to intimidate you, or staring at you. It's like a crash test dummy. C-3PO or something. So put arms on them and whatnot, and just create your basic figure, and then just do the same thing all the way around. Try and keep your proportions working. Kind of like that this one's overlapping this one. Makes for a little bit more interesting. It's going to look weird because it's going to look like there's a group of naked people standing around, so we don't know what's going on. Maybe they're at a nudist camp or something, who knows. But you do your figures, if you want to maybe enhance the mannequin-ness of them, probably a good idea. And then, obviously, happy to see he's waving at you. And then, same thing over here, just keep building these figures as we know how to do, or as we practice. And we'll just lay them out quick. And then once you get a little further back, you're definitely going to see the whole figure. And you can put the arms and legs, just put them in a stick arms and legs for now, and then get them in place where you want them, and then place them, that looks like Spider-Man back there. And then place them kind of where you want them. Chest out a little high, I think. This one's not pressed. Kind of standing akimbo. And then this one is getting a little bit bigger again. And you can make them any gender you want. And I'm just trying to keep these relatively neutral looking, but I guess they kind of look male-ish. Maybe this one has a cup of coffee. This is maybe Mannequin Pete. That foot's definitely small. So now you've got your figures in place where you want them, and then you can put your building wherever you want it. Try to keep, maybe I'll do a package this time. Try to keep your scale, think about where you want it to go. Maybe it's a fairly wide package. Keep the lid open. And you can put some details on there, like a name. Again, be all freehand. Just maintain your use of perspective, freehand perspective as best you can. And it looks like these are toys coming out of the box of cereal. Remember, I don't know if any of you guys remember getting toys in cereal boxes? Probably not. Do you? Yeah. That was like the highlight of the day when parents brought home a new box of cereal and you dug around and tried to get the toy out first. They should do stuff like that again. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's kind of where you want to go. Then you go around, if you did this quick like I just did, then go around and start to kind of flesh out your, and it's good that they overlap. It looks way more realistic and interesting if they're overlapping a little bit like that, rather than like randomly or evenly spaced. Try and build these things, body them up a little bit, however you want to do. Leg got a little skinny. And again, clothe them, do what you gotta do. You do you. If you're just comfortable doing that, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that at all. It's an exercise. You can get as detailed as you want, but it's just basically to show you how to place these figures fairly accurately and quickly. Like it literally, what that take? 10 minutes? For that part of it, like you can literally place those figures quite easily on the picture plane and make it believable. Then the only big part of the job for you guys is inking it. So you can freehand it. Obviously, the figures you're probably going to freehand inking. Be a little awkward otherwise. And you can clean it, you can erase after the fact if you want. You can leave the construction if you want to show that you were freehanding it. Kind of up to you. But kind of like the creepy crash test dummy looking guy. Ink them all up, ink the box or the building. You want to use rulers on the box or building just to kind of show that it's a little bit more structured and tight compared to the figures, that's cool. Whatever you wanna do. And if you wanna shade a little bit, again, good time to practice shading. Just a little bit here and there, you don't have to shade them too much. Maybe this guy standing in the shadow of something. But shading them a little bit lightly will add to the depth of the feeling of the drawing. If you wanna add more than this, if you wanna like add tree in the background, by all means, you can do that. You can have another tree standing here. Maybe there's a branch sticking out there. Do whatever you wanna do. Get as creative as you want with it. That is your second to last project. Next week, we'll work on the exploding sandwich. Exploded sandwich, not exploding. I think one person in the past has done it as like, it's literally being blown up by dynamite, which was actually kind of funny. But it's an exploded view. So when you look, sometimes you'll see instructions of certain things, and there's an exploded view of the object, so you can kind of see all the parts stacked up. That's where we're going with the sandwich thing. So next week, we'll talk about that. That'll be your final project. The final week, it's hard to believe we're almost done. Final week of school, there won't be any new project. All your stuff will be